Check, check, check. Good morning.
Good morning, Glenn.
How are you doing?
All right. How about you?
All right, pretty good.
That's good to hear. You're in a better spot. You are in a better spot. Good.
I think so.
We have not started the group yet, right?
No, not yet. Not
Okay.
yet, no.
I would just raise a question before they come. Is it all right?
Please.
When we talk about the body is a delusion or illusion, you caught my attention a lot, and I thought about it. How can I, when I deliver a baby, how can that be a delusion? Because you brought it the name of it, someone that he is one of the sages, that the worms were eating his flesh.
Yeah.
And it didn't affect him. But we as a human being, I mean, how can I ignore 9 months of a baby in me and the pain that I went through and the birth that I gave to the child? How can it be forgotten? And I have to say delusion.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit the reality.
Correct. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you can't forget it, and you shouldn't try to forget it. If you take the idea of the body being an illusion as saying, well, then it doesn't matter, I just need to forget it, or anything like that, it's not going to work. And in fact, it's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to be like a suppression. The best way to think about it, I think the way that the Swami has described it, is to talk about it in the same way that we talk about a dream. So when you are in a dream, let's say you have a dream in which you are pregnant and then you give birth to a baby. Now, in the dream, the pregnancy is real to you, the pain is real to you, the baby is real to you. But when you wake up, you realize that it was all imaginary. So what this philosophy is saying around that idea is to say that as real as you thought it was in the dream, it turned out to be not real. And now it says, as real as you think your body is here in the waking state, imagine if it's not real. It's not telling you what to think. It's just saying, imagine if it was like a dream. Imagine if you can wake up and realize, oh, that whole thing, my children, my body, my house, it was all like a dream. It's asking us to view it from a different perspective. Imagine if, because if you try to force yourself to say, well, it's an illusion and I'm going to forget about it, then that's a suppression of what is real to you. And Vedanta and psychology both tell us that when you suppress what you find to be real, it's harmful to you and counterproductive to your spiritual growth. Instead of suppressing it, work with it. If it feels real to you, then fine, work with it. If that's your reality, then treat that as your reality, but just imagine the possibility, just one thread of your awareness. Imagine if this was like a dream.
Well, I can see a child will grow and it's so far away, as if, as you said, it was a dream and it's finished and it's done, and nothing is connected to it. You don't even remember. But I thought about it when you told me everything is illusion. I said, how can that be a woman who's pregnant and she's giving birth? And that's excruciating pain she goes through. And to come and say, you know what, it is illusion, I should not. But after a while, you forget about that giving birth and the pregnancies and all that. So it takes time for everything that comes up, it goes down. That one, I can understand it. But to say I am pregnant and I carry this 9 months child in me, and this is an illusion, it doesn't get into any mother's head. I mean,
no, it absolutely won't. And it's not something to be accepted. That's the point. I'll give you an example. You know how, from a different sort of field, you know how if we're dealing with an adult and they are being unreasonable and angry and that sort of thing, we sometimes might say, you know, oh, he's acting like a child. So you might say, well, you know, perhaps something happened in his past when he was a child, and the current circumstances are making him regress back to being a child. Now, we're not saying he is a child. We're not saying he's a little boy, but what we're doing is adding a new lens to the situation so that we view it differently. We're not denying the fact that he's an adult. But what we're doing is saying, imagine if, instead of dealing with an adult, imagine if I was dealing with a 10-year-old boy. And you use that imaginative lens as a way of just viewing the situation differently. So you're not suppressing the reality, which is that you're dealing with an adult man, but you're simply adding to it a new perspective. And the same thing with the idea of the body being an illusion. We're not denying your reality, which is that it's real to you. We're just adding a new lens, an imaginative exploration as a way of relating to it differently. And you know, you said something really interesting. It was an incomplete sentence, but you said, you know, you can't tell a mother that the birth in the body was an illusion and that she should, and then you sort of went on to something else. It's a really important point here. There's no should.
It's a reality. That's what I said. I said, how can she forget about it? This is a reality. This is 9 months living in her.
That's right. Moving. So she cannot forget about it, and she should not try. If anyone takes this philosophy and sees that world is an illusion, therefore I should try to forget about it, they have wrongly understood it. What's interesting is that the world being an illusion is an idea. It doesn't lead to any shoulds. So Vedanta is not going to say the world is an illusion, therefore you should or shouldn't.
No, it's not about the should. I apologize. I used the wrong word.
It's interesting because I mean there are people who may feel that way. So I thought it was an interesting point just to bring up.
What I'm talking about, I know we're going to start. There's a young woman, I know her children are growing up. And she told me, I was surprised to hear that from her. She said, do you know, everything is rent. She used the word rent. The friends are rented. The children are rented. They're not mine. I was shocked to hear that from her. I told her, you don't even study a book. Well, that made sense in my mind.
Yeah.
That an ordinary human being, to be able to distinguish or to understand, the children have to go. They're not hers. And she said, they are just a rent. It has been given to me. And the friends will come and go, And whatever material is, it comes and it goes. Nothing is mine. So I was surprised to hear this from someone that have not had any study, but she has a concept of why this life, it comes and it goes. That one I can definitely respect.
Yeah, that's an idea that is very similar, and that might be a much more appropriate way for many people to think about it. You know, my body is rented.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one of the Upanishads where the self-realized soul is dying. And he says, let this body go back to the earth that it came from. Let my breath go back to the total air that it's come from, and that sort of thing. It's a similar sort of idea that I temporarily rented a bit of dirt as my body, and now I'm going to give it back. Yes. I temporarily was renting some air, and he goes further and says, my mind, I'll give my mind back, and my intellect to give that back as well. Everything is rented. Body, mind, intellect, everything is rented. Who's the one renting it? Who's the one renting it?
Well, I think, let's suppose I just supposedly, I rented my children. They were with me until they grew up and they left. The friends, we rent them and they change. They keep moving on. It's not that you can keep anyone forever. The rent, it makes sense in my mind that yes, no one's going to, everything is changed. Everything is temporarily in life. That I can have a concept of. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got into a bit of pre-discussion before the class. So let's begin with our usual invocation.
Thank you.
Oh. Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahe, tejasvinavadidhamastu mavit vishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we're continuing with chapter 19 of the Vedanta Treatise, the illusions, Maya. Are there any questions on anything before we pick up? It doesn't strictly have to be about this chapter, if anything at all. Okay, as always, feel free to interrupt as we go through, or you can use the chat box as well if you wish, and we can get to the questions as we go. All right, so what have we been talking about? We've been talking about this idea that the world is an illusion. How do we understand this? Okay, this is what our little pre-discussion was about. One of the ways we can understand it actually which was offered, was to think about, I'm renting everything. This is perhaps another way to look at the whole idea of an illusion, because what we touched on in the earlier section was the definition of reality. And we were saying that the test of reality is that it persists. Something that does not depend upon anything else for its existence is real. Something that persists, that existed in the past, exists here in the present, and will exist in the future, is real. Okay, so what is it that stands the test of reality? There's nothing you can point at that stands the test of reality. The waking state of consciousness and everything in it does not last. It disappears as we go into dream or deep sleep. Nothing in the dream lasts, nothing in the deep sleep state lasts. Everything changes, everything disappears. It's rented for a while and then goes. And so if it's not real, then do we say it's unreal? And no, we can't say it's unreal, for exactly the reason that was earlier brought up. If you are carrying a child and then you give birth to it, how can you say that experience is not real? I was so embedded in that. It was so excruciating. It was so absorbing of my attention. How can you tell me that was not real? Vedanta is not saying it's not real. So we're not saying that the world is real, nor are we saying that the world is not real, nor are we saying that it's a mixture, because you can't have a mixture of real and not real. So then what is it? This is why he says it's like a dream. So go back to the dream you had last night or the night before. You're drinking coffee in Paris. Is it real? Well, no, it's not real, because it's a dream. Was it unreal? Well, you can't say it was unreal, because it was actually happening to me. So what is it? It was a dream. This world that you're experiencing right now, you're sitting in your home or somewhere. Is it real? Well, you can't say it's real, because it's going to change. Is it unreal? No, it's not unreal, because it's happening. I can, see my table and my coffee and my computer. So what is it? I don't know. Maybe it's like a dream. Maybe there's another state of consciousness from which, when I wake up into, will show me that this experience I'm having right now was like a dream. This is the idea that we are trying to contemplate, to just bring into our awareness. And a really important aspect which came out of our early discussion was that it's not then that there are shoulds or shouldn'ts that follow on from that. It's simply that we try to view our life through this lens as a way of developing some objectivity.
The only thing this dream is different, that's supposed to the daily life. memories sticks in your mind.
Mm.
This is Krishna's process, is not mine.
Yeah.
What the human being that suffers, it retains the memories, and the memories, as we know, they're not real, and because they're gone, they're finished. It was rent, it's not there. But we as a human being, we have a tendency to focus on our memories, and the memories are the one that causes whatever we call it sorrow or the pain we go through. So it is because everything is through the eyes. Again, it's his discussion. Human beings, it watches everything through the eyes, and everything that catches his attention, he keeps it in. So that's the memories.
You're right. Our memories, this is another interesting way to think about it, because our memories are not real.
Yeah, they're gone.
But what happens is, as you rightly point out, but what happens is that when we focus on them, we make them real again for us. As the mind, as our attention goes back to memories, they seem very real for us again in that moment. And there's an interesting analogy here with the brain. So I'm by no means an expert on this. I've just heard some others talk about this who are experts. And when you are having an experience right now, if you were to have a brain scan, we'd see, the neurons firing in different ways. When you remember something that happened, the neurons fire in the same way. So what's it saying? It's saying that from the brain's perspective, memory and lived experience are the same thing. When you actually have an experience, the brain fires in the same way as when you remember it. So it's an interesting analogy for this idea that wherever we place our attention, that appears real to us. That's what we make real. And it's the same idea when we fall into the dream. What is it that makes the dream seem so real to us? It's the fact that you are there. You are the reality, not the perceptions you're experiencing, not your body, not the emotions that are going through it, not the thoughts that are arising in the intellect. What makes something real is you, because you are real. And so where are you? Currently, I'm in the dream. So the dream is real. I give the stamp of reality to the dream. My reality gets shed like a light onto the dream world. And it imparts this semblance of reality to it. Then I wake up, and now here I am in the waking world. And now myself gets shed onto the waking world like a light. And it lends a semblance of reality to it. My mind goes to a memory, that thing that happened to me. And it seems so real to me. Why? Because my attention is on it. We make things real by our attention. They seem real to us. And when we take our attention off it, we see it wasn't real. It doesn't have this independent reality of its own. So yeah, all these sorts of ideas are avenues for exploration of this idea of the world being an illusion. Okay, so let's continue with our next section, intrinsic and extrinsic illusions. So what is this section? In this section, and this is actually taken from a Swami by the name of Ramatirtha. So there's a series of books called In the Woods of God Realization. And it's a collection of his discourses. So he didn't do a lot of writing, but some great soul decided to transcribe a lot of his writings, and we have those. And this is taken from that. So it describes the illusion that he's been up to this point talking about. He says, people have observed a shoe being made by a shoemaker, a dress being made by a dressmaker, a pot by a pot maker. They look at the world and conclude there must be a world maker, that there must have been a creator who created the world. They christened him God. Their conclusion sounds plausible, quite reasonable, but then it is a mere theory. a supposition, speculation. If you maintain this theory that God created the world, you separate God from the world. You segregate God in the world, thereby restrict the all-pervading nature of God. You place a limitation on the infinite being. Moreover, by making God a creator, you attribute motives, desires to God. You reduce God to the status of a shoemaker, a dressmaker, a pot maker. You must realize the origin of the world is well beyond the reach of the human intellect. The human intellect cannot conceive God. Give up that idea. Do not lead yourself to superstitious beliefs. Let your approach to the world be rational. Proceed from the known to the unknown. Do not take anything for granted. Through study, reflection, and meditation, you must gradually unveil your real self, realize your true self, discover your supreme being, attain spiritual enlightenment. You will then realize the extraordinary illusion you were caught up in. Okay, so theories of creation of the world. And again, the word world isn't referring to our planet. It's talking about this realm of experience. So the entire universe, not just of the external matter, tables and cities and planets and stars, but the world of internal matter as well. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, likes and dislikes, desires, impulses, beliefs, everything, the whole universe of experience. So he says that there are these theories of creation. So why? Well, because that's human nature. We are pattern-seeking creatures. We are meaning-creating. We are cause-seeking. We want to understand how things happen and why they happen. And in the absence of that kind of meaning, we are agitated, to put it simply. And so what we always do is create meaning. And we do it whether we know it or not. When we are young and we have an experience, we immediately attribute some meaning to it. What's a simple example? You have a young child, this is one that comes up often, a young child whose parents divorce. Now, we know that it's possible for the young child to say, oh, it was my fault, that they take on the burden of guilt of their parents' breakup. Now, that to us from the outside, that seems irrational. We know it's not the case. Then why does the child do it? It's human nature to attribute meaning, to attribute purpose, to attribute cause. And because the young child doesn't have a very sophisticated way of viewing the world, she makes up whatever she can, the only thing that can come to her. We are always looking to create this understanding, this meaning, this purpose. Same thing with the creation of the entire world. We don't know how it came about. This is one of the points he's making here. We don't know how the universe came into existence, but that's not going to stop us from coming up with a theory. And so, shoe made by a shoemaker, pot made by a pot maker, world must have been made by a world maker. So this theory is dreamt up, if you like, or created and presented as a way of eliminating that dissonance, that agitation of not knowing. And so to a degree, it satisfies that. But as he says, when you actually look at that theory, there's some holes in it. First of all, you separate God from the world. So you can ask the question, well, where did this creator come into existence from? Oh, God always existed. Okay, not very useful. The second thing he says here is that you attribute motives. So I want a cup of coffee, I want a job, I want a partner. We understand these things. So now I'm saying, well, what's God like? Well, God's also just a being who has desires. He wanted to create a universe, so he did. So you attribute the very human, restricted, confined desires of a human being to God. Again, they don't make sense, these ideas. So the theories of creation are limited. If you really start to probe into it, they don't stand up. So he says our approach to understanding the existence or the creation of the world, he says, must be rational, proceed from the known to the unknown. And this is what the next section tries to do. And then, as always, he always leads it back to that same idea, that the exploration of how the world came into existence, the nature of the world, its illusory nature, for what? What's the point? You could all be anywhere else right now, doing something else. It's 10 a.m. on a Sunday if you're in California. You could be lying in bed, having a coffee, reading the newspaper, going for a nice walk. Instead, we're looking at a book that says the world is an illusion. What's it all for? It's done in the service of realizing your true self, not the ego, not the roles that you play, not the relationships that you have, not the body that you own, not the body that you're currently renting, or your mind and intellect. That's not your true self. It's done in the service of uncovering who you truly are. Why? Okay, we can keep on going into why. But the point is that this is what we're doing. It's a way of trying to see who and what we really are. The self-realized had declared from their own experience that the world you perceive is just an illusory projection upon the supreme reality, that there are two illusions playing in the world, termed as intrinsic and extrinsic, which have held the mass of humanity in total delusion. Okay, so this is what it gets into this next section. And so this is, again, just a way of continuing to explore this idea. So the idea that is presented is that there are two illusions at play, and there are different types, but they're both there. So he describes them next. The first he describes as the intrinsic illusion, and the second is the extrinsic illusion. So as always, as we go through, feel free to interrupt if you have any queries or comments. He says, an intrinsic illusion is one in which the real object and its illusion do not coexist. When the object is cognized, the illusion disappears, and when the illusion appears, the object disappears. The object and image do not appear together. Okay, so I'll just pause there. So object and image, the word object is referring to the real thing. The word image is referring to the illusory part of the whole phenomenon. For example, a child misapprehends a post in the dark to be a ghost. The child sees the ghost, it does not see the post. You see the post, you do not see the ghost. You then bring in light, illumine the post. The child now cognizes the post. Instantly the ghost is gone. You will notice that only one of them appears at a time. It is either the post or the ghost. They can never appear together to the same person at one time. This is an intrinsic illusion. Okay, so fairly easy to understand. We've all had this experience, maybe not ghost and post, but we might be standing at a bus stop, maybe it's dusk or early morning or nighttime, and there's a tree or a lamppost or a street sign, and out of the corner of our eye, we see a person standing there, the paint flaking off and the shadows and the absence of light. It looks like a human face and a man hunched in a coat. We actually see a person. That's what we perceive. The person is real to us. And we turn to see who it is. Or a car drives past and shines its light. The moment the light goes on to the person, we immediately see that it's not a person, it's a post. So you got these two things, the post and the person, or in the example, ghost. never appear together. Okay, fairly easy to get your head around. An extrinsic illusion is one in which the object, image, and the medium which causes the image appear together. All three are present at the same time. An example of an extrinsic illusion is reflection in a mirror. You see your image in the mirror. The mirror is the medium that produces your reflection. In this illusion, you, your reflection, and the mirror all appear together. The object, image, and medium present themselves simultaneously. That is an extrinsic illusion. Okay, so again, fairly easy to understand. We've all had this experience. Another way to think about this is you think about those funhouse mirrors. You go and stand in front of it and all of a sudden you're 2 feet taller or shorter and a foot wider, or that kind of thing. The image is a caricature of the real object, which is your body. So in that experience, or in that phenomenon, you have three things appearing together. The real object is cognizable to you. It's your body. You know it's your body. There's an illusory image. Hey, I'm 2 feet taller. That'd be nice. Okay, that's also cognizable, visible to you at the same time. And the medium that produces that image is also there available to you. It's the mirror. So all three things are available to you. They're cognizable simultaneously. They appear to you. This is a different kind of illusion. It's the extrinsic illusion here. So we've got two types, intrinsic, extrinsic. Continues on. He says, there is yet another interesting phenomenon about these illusions, the possibility of both the intrinsic and extrinsic facets appearing simultaneously in a single illusion. Okay, so we've got intrinsic, extrinsic, and now he says they can both appear together in a single illusion. So the analogy that he's going to draw on here is one that is famous and ancient. It appears in the Upanishads. It's that of a boy who sees a snake in the dark. The snake is not a snake, it's a rope. Right? In the same way that we've got ghost and post in the earlier example, a boy goes to his home, walks through the yard, it's nighttime. There's a rope coiled up at the base of the tree. Instead of seeing a rope, he sees a snake. So what he's going to talk about next is how both the intrinsic and extrinsic illusions appear together. A boy treads on a rope in the dark, mistakes it for a snake. He sees a snake. He does not see the rope. That is an intrinsic illusion where only one of the two is seen, the snake and not the rope. Okay, so that's fairly easy. If, for example, his father turned the floodlights on from outside, immediately the snake would disappear and the rope would be seen. One appears at a time only. At the moment, there's no rope to the boy, only a snake. Turn the light on, there's no snake to the boy, only a rope. So again, intrinsic illusion. Now follow carefully. You will find therein an extrinsic illusion created as well. Ask the boy to describe the snake he has seen. He says it is 6 feet long, 4 inches thick, black in color. Examine the rope. You find the rope is 6 feet long, 4 inches thick, black. The boy's description of the snake fits exactly with that of the rope. The properties of the rope have mirrored themselves in the illusory snake. The properties of the snake is merely a reflection of the properties of the rope. And the medium that has brought up this reflection is the illusory snake. The moment the snake was projected upon the rope, the snake becomes the medium for the properties of the rope and the properties of the snake to appear together at one time. Thus, the two sets of properties and the medium present themselves simultaneously. All three coexist. That is an extrinsic illusion. Okay, and this is definitely worth going over a little slowly. So when the boy is in the yard with the light off, he creates a snake. Where is it? Where is that snake? Well, it depends on what perspective you take. From the perspective of the boy, the snake is out there in the yard. From our perspective, when we see what's going on, we recognize that that snake, it exists for him in this moment. So we can't say it's not real, but it exists in his mind. He has created within his own mind, with his own perception, a snake. Once that snake has been created in his mind, it becomes a medium to reflect other things. Go back to the idea of the extrinsic illusion that we touched on just now. There is a medium that allows the reflection of things. It's a mirror. You have a fun, fair mirror that allows the reflection of your properties into an image. I'm wearing blue clothing. What color clothing does the image wear? Well, blue. The mirror faithfully reflects the color of my clothing. What's my orientation? Well, I'm standing on my feet and my head is up. What's the image like? The same thing, standing, feet down, head up. It reflects certain properties. That's the medium. So the imaginary snake that the boy has created, it acts like the mirror. It's now capable of reflecting things. What does it reflect? The color of the rope is black. So what color will the snake be? Black. The thickness of the snake is 4 inches. So how thick will, I knew it was going to happen. The thickness of the rope is 4 inches. So what will the thickness of the snake be? 4 inches. The length of the rope is 6 feet. So what will the length of the snake be? 6 feet. The properties of the real object, the rope, are reflected as the properties of the snake. How is it possible? An illusory snake is set up in the boy's mind and that acts like a mirror, reflecting those properties. He says in the next paragraph, human beings are caught up in both intrinsic and extrinsic illusions in their experience of the world. So if we're studying this, and I'd encourage you to reread this a couple of times, this is the crux of it. To say that right now, even as I'm talking about it, what we're experiencing is a grand illusion made up of both an intrinsic and extrinsic illusion. We're caught up in it right now. How? Okay, so any questions on anything before we shift on to a bit more of the analysis? He says, the world appears to you as a pluralistic phenomenon of things and beings, as an infinite expression of time, space, and causation. But the entire world is nothing but Brahman. Brahman alone exists, but you see a world, not Brahman. Like the boy seeing a rope and not, like the boy seeing a snake and not the rope. You see a world where there is Brahman. That is the intrinsic illusion. Okay, so before we get too much into the paragraph, this word Brahman means what? You can think of it almost just like a placeholder for the thing that is real. The ghost is not the thing that is real. The thing that is real is the post. The image in the mirror is not the thing that is real. What's real is my body. It's not actually 6.5 feet tall, it's 4.5 feet tall. No, I'm taller than that. So the word Brahman means that which is intrinsically real. That which is real. It is the reality, the thing which does not change, the substratum out of which all of this appears. So what he's saying here is that when we look at a world, we are seeing not the thing that is real, but instead a pluralistic phenomenon of objects and beings. So that's what he's saying, that the whole thing, everything that you look at and see, the houses and the trees and the sky and the birds, your own place of residence, the room you're in, the chair you're sitting on, the body that you've got, the thoughts you're entertaining, the feelings that are going through your personality, that's the image. That's the pluralistic phenomenon of things and beings, which is the not real part. That's what you're seeing instead of the reality. So this whole thing you're experiencing, that's the ghost, or that's the snake. We don't perceive, we don't see, we don't cognize the real thing, which he calls Brahman. So that's the intrinsic illusion. We see a world and not Brahman. Take someone who is self-realized, it's the other way around. They see Brahman and not the world. In the same phenomenon, there is an extrinsic illusion as well. Brahman is said to be eternal, all-pervading, infinite. You find these properties in the world as well. The world seems to have come from eternity and going into eternity. It is all-pervasive and its chain of causation runs into infinity. Thus, the world also appears to be eternal, all-pervading, infinite. You see the properties of Brahman clearly reflected in the properties of the world. The medium that has caused this reflection is the world itself. The moment the world appears, the three aspects of an extrinsic illusion show up. The two sets of properties and the medium all appearing at one time. That is the extrinsic illusion. So go back to our analogy of the snake. The snake appears black, 4 inches thick, and 6 feet long. Why? Why is it not brown, 3 inches thick, and 4 feet long? Because the rope is 6'4" black. So the illusory snake is set up in the boy's mind. It acts to reflect the properties of the rope as the snake. Right? He says the same thing is happening here. What are the properties of the world? Well, as he says, the properties of the world is that it is eternal, all-pervading, and infinite. It's eternal in the sense that we cannot conceive of a time in which the universe didn't exist. Even if we stretch back to the Big Bang, towards the Big Bang, and then right to that moment of the Big Bang, and then we even decide to project our awareness, imagine what was there before the Big Bang. Even then, what have we got? We've got a something. Now we might say it's a big empty vacuum. Okay, then that's still a thing to us. Even if we travel before the Big Bang, we still are there looking at it. It's the old idea that you might have heard before. Imagine a universe in which nothing exists. Imagine no universe. You can't do it for the simple reason that as you do so, you are there. Okay, you close your eyes and you drop all of the perceptions that you're currently having and thoughts and so forth, and you just imagine the absence of everything. You are there observing that, so it's still not empty. So we can't conceive of a beginning or an end of time. That inability of us, it's not a weakness, it's just a feature of the intellect. That is, the intellect is limited, it's finite. That infinite, or that eternity, appears to us to be the nature of the world. It's the timeline stretches both directions. So the world to us appears eternal, all pervading. There's no edge. Get in a rocket ship and start traveling. It's not that you hit a wall or hit a end of the universe. It keeps on going. Now, where do you end up? Do you come back around to the same place you started? The point is that the space to us seems all pervading. And same with causation. A becomes B, becomes C, D, E, F. Every effect has a cause, every cause has an effect. So again, we can't conceive of a beginning or an end to causation. It's infinite. So what is the nature of the world? Eternal, all-pervading, infinite. These are the properties of the world. In the same way that the properties of the snake are 4 inches thick, 6 feet long, and black. Where did the properties of the snake come from? They were reflected from the properties of the rope. Where do the properties of the world come from? They are reflected from the properties of the reality. The boy creates a snake, and that snake reflects the properties of the rope. We create a world, and that world reflects the properties of the reality. So this is where he describes both. We have both the intrinsic and extrinsic illusions coexisting.
Can I ask a question when you talk about the world? Many civilizations have been destroyed. They have gone under the water, people have died, and again, it was rebuilt. So that's the question that crossed my mind when you said everything is eternal. One of the things that constantly you hear is the dinosaurs, where they went, what happened to these huge animals. So something, it happens in this process that it stops, the world goes down and then it comes up. Something, it takes place, is not the way maybe we see it, because every time you have something to pay attention to, you see the world have gone under. And why does it go under? Why it destroys? Because they find the homes, they find the rooms, they find everything there. And so that's, I don't know, if I just because you talked about eternal, I just said it doesn't seem to me eternal, because it goes down and it comes up.
Yeah, good point. So when we say that the world is eternal, we're not talking about any particular aspect of it. In fact, this is one of the things that Vedanta says, that nothing in the world is eternal. Your body is not eternal. The society, the civilization, the Roman Empire was never going to be eternal. American Empire is never going to be eternal. Human civilization is not eternal. We're all going to die out at some point. The heat death of the universe. So there's nothing, no single aspect of the world is eternal. But what is eternal? Existence of. So what do we mean by this? Okay, you gave the example of dinosaurs, which is a good one. You have dinosaurs roaming around, right? Those dinosaurs die and are subsumed into the earth. that dinosaur over a period of time becomes oil. That oil gets extracted from the ground and put into a refinery, and it becomes gasoline, and that goes into your vehicle and it gets combusted and it becomes carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide gets absorbed by a plant and it becomes a tree, and that tree gets eaten by another animal, and that animal dies and goes into the ground. The dinosaur is not eternal, the oil is not eternal, the gasoline is not eternal, the carbon dioxide is not eternal, the tree is not eternal, the animal is not eternal. None of these things is eternal. But what is eternal? Existence. The dinosaur exists, oil exists, gasoline exists, carbon dioxide exists, tree exists, animal exists. What is eternal? Existence per se, not the existence of a particular thing, but existence continues from one form to the next. Is the dinosaur is, oil is all the way along. Now the thing that is, that changes. That's less of importance to us as a philosopher. Objects come and go. They're rented for a while, then they're given back. But what doesn't come and go? Isness, the very existence of, that continues onwards. What are you going to place your attention on while you're on the spiritual path, while you're in this life? If I place my attention on things that have a temporary existence, that is how I will perceive the world. And especially if I get attached to it, as you brought up earlier on, if I'm attached to my children, then when they leave, I suffer. If I'm attached to my wealth, then when it gets taken, I suffer. If I'm attached to my physical health, then when it leaves me, I suffer. Why? Because I have placed my attention on those things. I can choose to place my attention on the thing which is eternal. Mere existence per se, not existence of a particular thing. So there's two aspects that we need to sort of tease apart. One is the specific object, which has a birth and a death. And the other is the more philosophical aspect, which does not. And that's what he's pointing at when he uses this word Brahman. Brahman is eternal. Which is what he begins to talk about in the next paragraph. He says, Brahman is the one reality existing everywhere at all times. Brahman is Atman, the supreme self within. It is ignorance of Brahman, the ignorance of self that projects the two illusions. The non-apprehension of self causes the misapprehensions of the world. You do not see the supreme reality, instead you see the world. You also see the attributes of reality in the world. The solid seeming world is a play of the illusions, a meaningless projection. Strive hard to get out of these illusions you are lost in. Be it said to the credit of prevailing religions that they have helped in removing one of the two illusions. At best, they have succeeded in overcoming the extrinsic illusion. Undoubtedly approach the reality, but that is not reaching the reality. Vedanta takes you well beyond that, removes not only the extrinsic but the intrinsic illusion as well, provides you with the knowledge of the supreme self within. Both the illusions disappear. You apprehend the ultimate reality, merge with Brahman. So it's this same idea that he keeps coming back to. Okay, if the world is an illusion, then what's the real object? What's the real thing? He says the real thing is your own self. And this is the real difficulty for us. This analysis that we've gone through, boy treads on a rope but sees a snake, it's fairly easy to grasp. There's a few little nuances you need to get your head around, but you read it a couple of times and give it some thought, you'll get there. It's not difficult. The real difficulty is in thinking that, well, so what is the real object? In the analogy, what is the snake? done it again. What is the real object? In the analogy, what is the rope? It is my own self. This personality, this ego, and this world that I project is the snake. It's the thing that is not real. My own self is the thing that is real. I don't see the rope, instead I see the snake. I don't see my true self. Instead, I see this pluralistic world. I don't know who I am. This is the starting point for us. So the idea of the illusions is to get us to overlay this philosophical treatment to the world that we see, so that we can investigate what is real. What is the real object that I'm missing? It's my own self. And he says that the religions have helped in removing the extrinsic illusion, but haven't done so much for the intrinsic illusion. So removing the extrinsic illusion means what? Removing the extrinsic illusion you can think of as recognizing that the properties of the object and the properties of the image are the same. In the same way that, when you look at the rope and you look at the snake, you can see that the properties are the same. They're not separate properties. So what are the properties of the world? The properties of the world are the properties of God. So how does this come about? I can give you an example of someone that I met a number of years ago. So she was a great devotee of Krishna. So Lord Krishna, one of the most revered gods, figures in the Indian culture and Indian mythology. She says, everywhere I look, I see Krishna. So this was at the Vedanta Academy in India. And she says, the pond I see over there is Krishna. The trees is Krishna. And you can imagine where this might go. The blowing of the wind across my face. This is the breath of Krishna. The trees, lungs of Krishna. The ocean is whatever. Everywhere she looks, she sees Krishna. Okay, that's a very devotional attitude. And you can see how this could be a description of removing the extrinsic illusion. I'm not seeing the world as separate from my Lord, the Lord of my heart, my particular personal God. They are one and the same. The person in front of me, it's one of the beings in the dream of Krishna. I also am a being in the dream of Krishna. So if you could imagine that, for example, that this whole thing is just a dream of, pick your favorite God. And so we're all just threads of awareness of Lord such and such. Everywhere you look, you would see the mind of your God. That would be the removal of the extrinsic illusion. The properties of the world that I see are the properties of the reality. They're the same thing. But you still have me experiencing the world, two separate entities. Here I am, and I'm experiencing the mind of God. They're still separate. There's still a gap. There is still what we call the subject-object duality. It's dualistic. I'm here, the world is there. It's beautiful. It's nothing but the mind of the Lord. But I'm here experiencing it. There's still a sense of separation. You are talking to your most beloved, your partner, your child. I'm here, you're there. I love you. There's two entities. Is that real? Are there two entities? I love the world. There's two entities. There's me, the lover, and there's the world beloved. Are there two entities? It seems that way to me, but it seems that way in my dream as well. In my dream, I was talking to my great-great-grandfather, dear departed. In the dream, it seemed that there were two of us, me talking, him responding. When I wake up, I realized there weren't two entities. Me in the dream and the dream great-great-grandfather were part of a single phenomenon of the dream world, the dreamscape. While I was in it, it seemed that there were two entities. But when I look at my dream from outside, I recognize it was all just part of one phenomenon of mind. Here you are now, interacting with your world. Subject, object, duality. It seems that there are two entities. Whom do you most love? My cat. All right, here's your cat. There's me and there's my cat. Seems that there are two entities. Are there? This is the idea. Not to tell us what is real, not to impose an idea upon us, but to just get us thinking, what if? What if me and my cat are not separate? What if me and my spouse, whom I've only known for 20 years, who apparently existed before I met her, what if we're not separate entities? Me and my child, I'm renting them. One day they'll be gone. What if we're not separate? What if there's only one of us? What if? We can't understand the truth, give that idea up, but we can overlay philosophical ideas to help us get closer to it.
I'd like to ask a question because you brought many, many things as you beautifully described. It crossed my mind. We live in the United States, it's a different world. You live in New Zealand, and then people who live in Afghanistan, which I hear a lot, as they go and they buy their daughters, they sell their little girls because they cannot afford eating or whatever. There are many tragedies in the world. Is that a destiny of a human being? Is that a destiny? It's why you cannot tell that mother believe in God and whatever, Krishna and pure, but she is loaded with pain. She is nothing but a pain. So I don't know how to describe the world because we live in a comfortable zones.
Yeah.
But many parts of the world, there's none. There's a prostitution, there's raping, there's children, the children are being abducted, the children, whatever, sex trafficking, everything, just name it. Is that the destiny of a children? Is that the destiny of some countries versus New Zealand or United States? That's what my mind cannot settle for one part because it goes all over. So how are we going to answer that?
So the first thing I'd say is that if you're dealing with someone who is, as you pointed out, in some sort of highly traumatic, very burdened experience, it would be irresponsible of you. And I know that you wouldn't, you just give an example, but it would be irresponsible of us to say the world is an illusion. It would be heartless. It would show an absolute lack of understanding and a deep lack of empathy. Tell someone who is starving, just think of God. It doesn't make any sense. It's not helpful. In fact, you could say it's cruel. This idea of the world being an illusion is something that we graduate to when we have been able to place our attention elsewhere for a sustained period of time. Interestingly enough, it is often the tragic experiences of life that, if we treat them correctly, can help us to detach. Because if everything is beautiful and perfect all the time, then we get stuck in that. Often when we have negative experiences, in the same way that, you touch a hot plate, you naturally pull your hand away. When you have a negative psychological experience, you naturally want to withdraw your attention from it. You want to pull your emotions back, pull your attachment back. So that can actually help us to do that. But as far as the way to deal with another person who's going through trauma, who's going through pain and suffering, this idea is not appropriate. So that's one of the first aspects. Second aspect, is it the destiny of one child or one person to go through one experience or another? Short answer to the question is we don't know. If you find someone who says, I know that it's that person's destiny to go through that, okay, listen to them. By all means, listen to them, because they may have something useful to say. But just hold your skepticism. How do you know? Which human being has the capacity to penetrate into the workings of the universe and understand all of the cause and effects, and to be able to say with certainty, if you go through that experience, it was your destiny? Is there a philosophical idea which suggests there is cause and effect? Yes. In fact, we base reincarnation on that. But again, we're not trying to describe how the world is. To an extent, we simply have to surrender. I do not know what is happening. Why does that child experience that when this child experiences this? I don't know. Why do I experience beauty and another person experiences ugliness? I don't know. So this philosophical idea that is used in these sorts of situations is simply that there is cause and effect. So that whatever you experience, it's a natural consequence of prior causes that have gone in. The difficulty with this idea is that it's very hard for us to get away from the idea of reward and punishment. And of course, you see this in religions all the time. If you're a good person, you go to heaven. If you're a bad person, you go to hell. Again, we inherently see cause effect happening in the world, and we intrinsically try to put meaning into it. If I'm experiencing good things, it was my destiny. I deserve it. If I experience bad things, it's my destiny. I deserve it. So is it the destiny of one human being to experience one thing or another? I don't know. I don't have that kind of penetration into the world. What does Vedanta say? Vedanta says there is cause and effect. Vedanta also says that there is free will. I choose to soothe those who are suffering, or I choose to inflict the suffering. That's my free will. So who's responsible for inflicting suffering? The one who chooses it. The other aspect which is important, and again, we must be careful how we say this, when we say this, and to whom we say it, is that each of us is responsible for the way that we experience the world. You gave a great example earlier on of someone who said, my children are rented. If that person's child is lost in an accident, if she has that perspective deeply embedded within her, then she will go through that experience with a lot less pain, with a lot less suffering than someone who says, this is my child, she's mine. If that child is tragically lost in an accident, she'll suffer more. Why? Because there's an attitude, there's a belief, there's a meaning system which allows her to go through experiences in a way that is less burdensome. It doesn't mean she's less sad. The loss of a child is tragic. Doesn't matter who it happens to, but there's a difference between sadness and suffering. You may experience the full range of human emotions of sadness, of loss and grief, but it doesn't crush your soul. Why not? Because you have a philosophical view on things. So is it the destiny of one person to go through it? Short answer is that there's a philosophical idea that says it is the natural effect of prior causes. The longer and more difficult answer is we don't know. And that's more difficult because we do not like not knowing. We do not like uncertainty. We do not like not having an answer as to why good people suffer, or why anyone suffers, good or bad. And so we try to make these ideas up. But the important point to take from that law of causation is that I will experience the world according to my preparation, according to the personality I have created. I'll take myself into environments according to my nature. If I keep thinking about gambling, I'll end up in the casino. If I keep thinking about sports, I'll end up in the sports arena. I'm going to take myself into that environment naturally. I'm just going to leave myself there. So where are my thoughts? What am I entertaining? What am I consuming? That's the important point to think about, not whether or not that person deserves to suffer. It's what causes am I putting in today, right now. And as far as our relationship with others suffering, all you can do is, as you've demonstrated, that deep empathy. Let your heart break with theirs. And then your empathy will guide you how to respond. And as you pointed out, if there is a young mother who's just lost her child, you're not going to start talking about the world being an illusion. Your child is only rented. You would never say that. You would meet them with whatever they need. These ideas are for us to give to ourselves, not for us to give to others.
Oh, very good. Very good. No, I agree with you. You can't tell a mother that it's your destiny. I agree. But then it's a big question. We all have problems. We all have struggles. But when you go to the other side of the world, you question everything. They call you the group of people hungry. Can you send money? Can you give something? They need help. They need food. You have to give. And you keep giving and you keep giving. There's not something that you don't give. You keep giving. But there's no ending. There's no ending. I know that. But then that's when you say you need to have empathy. Yes, the empathy is going to be there. But it doesn't stop it, unfortunately. It keeps, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Glenn. Very well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or queries before we finish off? Okay, thanks, folks. As always, appreciate the attendance and attention, the questions and so forth. We're back at 6 p.m. tomorrow, Pacific time, for our Q&A. So for those joining, I'll see you then. And then we're starting with the Ishavasya Upanishad on Tuesday at 6:30 Pacific time. So have a great week, and I'll catch you next time.
Thank you, Glenn.